Good morning, Year 6. Welcome to another edition of Oliver Twist. On Friday, you had the one from Miss Morrison and Miss Tandy read you the next chapter. So I'm going to continue with chapter 8 today. It says, "In which things look black for Oliver." "Did you knock on us?" snarled Bill Sykes, pushing his scared head close to Oliver's. "Did you go gabbing to your high and mighty friends about us?" "No, sir, truly," gasped Oliver, gibbering with terror. "'Cause if you did, I'll fix it so you never speak another word to anyone, ever, again. Understand?" Oliver nodded dumbly. Then, as Sykes wrenched him on his arm, broke into a trot to keep up. His kidnappers hustled him away to the darker side of London town. They were given a noisy welcome on his return to Fagin's den of thieves. The boys crowded around Oliver, laughing and pointing. "Look at Oliver! Look at them shoes! Whoa, fancy boots! Ain't you, little toff? Shame to spoil that nice new suit, ain't it, Mr. Fagin?" Fagin's leering face swept close to Oliver's face. "Quite right, my dears. Better change back into your working clothes, hey, Oliver?" As soon as Oliver saw his old suit hanging from a nail, he realised how they had tracked him down. Mrs. Bedwin, in presenting him with his new suit, had given the old one to a rag and bone man at the door. The suit, like some small, greasy, stolen boy, had passed from one pair of dishonest hands into another and another, until at last they came to Fagin, who carefully unravelled their secrets. The artful dodger dipped deep into Oliver's pocket and fetched out the £5 note. Fagin snatched it, saying, "It's mine." "The books you can keep, all right, Bill? Hand it over, you old rogue," said Sykes, drawing a knife. "We earned it, Nancy and I. You sell the books if you can find someone to buy them." "Oh no, please give them back," cried Oliver in desperation. "You must send them back to Mr. Brownlow. Keep me, but send back the money and the books, or he'll think I robbed them." The two men's eyes fell on him. In the heat of the quarrel, he'd almost slipped their mind. "So he will, my dear, so he will," mused Fagin, and a hideous grin slowly split his face. How very well things are turning out. In spite of her part in recapturing Oliver, Nancy seemed the only one with any pity for his plight. "Lord, forgive me what I have done," she whispered. She was very pale and her eyes were very bright. "I've robbed for you, Fagin, since I was younger than Oliver here. I've done whatever I had to do to survive. I'm nobody and nothing, and there's no help for me. But him, he had a chance. Oliver had a chance to lead a decent life. Now what's in store for him, except to cheat and steal and blacken his soul working for you, you old devil? He'll end up rotting in prison or swinging from a rope while you squirrel up the loot." She was raging now, tearing her hair and her clothes. The Brotherhood of Boys gasped at her, feeling afraid. "Do something, Bill," hissed the old man. "Her noise will fetch in the law." "Oh, I can shut her up soon enough," said Sykes uneasily. "Sometimes she gets like this, but it don't last. That's one thing with women. Nothing lasts with them." He fixed Nancy with a slap and knocked her down. The watching boys flinched. For a moment, their cheery, raucous little world was shown in its true light. Fear and violence. Dog eat dog. Oliver looked to the door, but the dog Bullseye growled and wriggled closer, fixing its bloodshot eyes on Oliver's throat. Long after dark, the two friends still sat, listening to the tick of the clock, hoping to hear Oliver's feet on the front steps. Long after all had passed, they went on waiting. Even Mr. Grimwing, who had won the bet, wished he had not. "Perhaps he got lost or was set up and robbed," said Mr. Brownlow. "Perhaps he did," said Mr. Grimwing. "You should offer a reward for any information." Mr. Brownlow brightened a little. I shall do that. I shall put a notice in the newspaper tomorrow morning. Then they sat in the darkness, each lost in their own thoughts, each returning time and time again to the thought of Oliver Twist. Mr. Bumble the Beadle glanced idly through the newspaper as he was sat waiting for his train. He was on his way to Birmingham for business. His eye fell on an advertisement in large black type, and it said this: 5 guinea reward to any person having information concerning one Oliver Twist, or how he might be found. The familiar name twisted itself into Mr. Bumble's heart like a corkscrew. At once, Mr. Bumble altered his travel plans and caught the next train to London. By evening, he was in Birmingham. Oh, I knew there would be news of him. I knew it, declared Mrs. Bedwin, hurrying him into the house. Bless his heart, I said all along. Mr. Bumble was ushered into the parlour, where Mr. Brownlow and Mr. Grimwing showered him with questions. Mr. Bumble's chest swelled with self-importance. He laid his tricorn hat on the table and perched very upright on the edge of his chair. I know the boy's history from the day of his birth until he deserted his duties and ran off to London, and every minute of it was filled with villainy and deceit, sir. Then settling himself like a chicken on her eggs, the Beadle began to tell the story he was sure Mr. Brownlow wanted to hear. It was a story of a thieving, lazy, spiteful boy, born vicious, common parents. A boy who would rather brawl and cheat than do an honest day's work. It was a story of a sly boy who used his innocent good looks to warm his way into kindly hearts, only to trick and deceive them. In short, there never was such an ungrateful, dishonest, unpleasant child in the history of the world, declared Mr. Bumble, folding his hands around his staff of office and smiling grimly. For a long time, Mr. Brownlow did not speak. Then he counted out 5 golden guineas into Bumble's hand. I am grateful to you, sir. The reward is yours, though I would gladly have paid you 3 times as much to hear you speak well of the boy. Oh, said Mr. Bumble, wishing he had known this before. Sadly, it was too late to unsay the lies he had just told. And that's it for chapter 8. We'll continue chapter 9 tomorrow, which is in which the robbery takes place. Okay, take care. See you tomorrow.